Hello, my beautiful buds. Welcome back to my channel, Sprouts with Joy. My name is Joy, and if you like to talk about plants, you're in the right place. The other day, I realized that I have a lot more alocasia than I thought that I did. For the longest time, I actually didn't even really like the alocasia genus, but once I started buying them and getting more into it, I realized that there are quite a few alocasia that I honestly really love the look of. And I think that we are probably about past due when it comes to sharing the alocasia in my collection. So whether you're looking to get some inspiration, maybe get into the alocasia genus and figure out which alocasia are out there, or if you're just like me and you like watching collection videos like this of plants and stuff, this is the video for you. Before we begin, just a few things. Yes, I'm kind of sick. I'm sorry. Apologies in advance if my voice is a little bit hoarse, but we're gonna push through this. I gotta stay on schedule. I have fallen behind a lot over the summer, and for the fall, I want to get back ahead. The other thing is I want to feature these alocasia in like chronological order, so I will share them in the order in which I got them. I just think that's the most fun to kind of get a sense of how my collection has changed over time. And then the other thing that I want to do that's a bit different from collection videos I've made in the past is that, if I'm being honest, like I have a fair chunk of alocasia, but really not a ton. Whereas, you know, with my Hoya and philodendron collection videos, even my Marantiaceae collection video, with those ones, I have so many plants that I just like don't have time to really talk about much else other than just speeding through them. But since we have a bit more wiggle room with the alocasias, I also want to mention a couple of alocasias on my wish list that I would like to add to my collection in the future. I don't know, I just felt like that would be kind of fun. And along the way, of course, I'll just kind of share care tips and stuff, but I'm not really an expert when it comes to alocasia. Far from it. I'm still kind of figuring out what works, but I can just kind of share my own experience. Okay, with all that out of the way, now let's start. This is my Alocasia Black Velvet, and clearly, as we're doing it in chronological order, this was my very first Alocasia that I ever added to my plant collection. And it was the Alocasia that kind of made me fall in love with the genus a little bit. I don't think that this was ever actually on my proper plant wish list. I mainly, if I'm being honest, I got this during the phase when I was going to plant shops all the time and nurseries, and just every time leaving with like 5 plants in my cart, which like probably wasn't great, not sustainable at all when it came to how many plants I could actually like keep in my home. But you know, it was still during that phase where I was buying a lot of plants quite frequently. But you know, I remember being quite terrified when I picked up this plant because I had heard all of these horror stories about how alocasias are super pest prone and, you know, are super fussy and give people a hard time, which, trust me, we'll get there later. But if you would believe it, I have honestly had very little issues with this plant. I've never actually had a pest on it. It has been pretty hardy. I do believe that there was one winter where this plant gave me a bit of a hard time, and I put it into my prop box and kind of revived it with just a mega dose of humidity. And you know, it's gone through periods of time where it'll give me lots of leaves and really be thriving, and other periods of time where, you know, it's just kind of meh. And I would say we're currently in a little bit of a meh phase. You know, it still is pretty, it's got plenty of leaves, but it's a little bit gangly and it hasn't really given me a lot of new growth recently, which we're heading into the winter, so I'm sort of expecting it's going to continue to not give me a ton of growth. I am rather surprised that it didn't give me a lot of growth this summer, but you know, it is what it is and that's okay. But what I love about this plant appearance wise is, I mean, obviously like these leaves, oh, look at her. They're so gothic, you know, and they're velvety, hence the name Black Velvet. Honestly, my favorite thing, and I don't have an example to show you, but my favorite thing about this plant is when the new leaves are emerging, there's some really like vibrant colors going on. Like a new leaf doesn't look just black. It comes in more of like a burnt orange-ish color. There's a lot of colors going on. It has like kind of purpley backs, so there's also a little bit of that purpliness. And I don't know, overall, like I just love the way that the new leaves look when they come in. Maybe I can find old footage or something somewhere. I don't know. It might be a journey to try to find that. I will attempt. But overall, like I just think that it's a really sweet plant, and I'm glad that it's still around, and I hope that in the future it, you know, grows again for me. The next alocasia in my collection is the Alocasia dragon scale. If I remember correctly, I feel like I got this plant many months after I got my first alocasia, the black velvet, like at least 6 months after, because yeah, I just remember for the longest time I had just the one alocasia in my collection. But I actually went to that same plant nursery where I got the black velvet, Candy's Garden Center, which is a garden center local to me. And yeah, I'm so glad that I got it, because this plant, of all the alocasia that I own, I feel like this one has definitely been the most consistently hardy. Like, I've never gone through any major hiccups with this plant. There have been periods of time where it kind of stopped growing or paused. I was never worried that this was gonna die on me, you know? I did recently trim off a couple of leaves that were older and yellowing off, but we do have a new leaf coming in its place, and it looks like this is an inflow, I believe, which I will say, this plant gets really stinky inflows. It gets bloomed a few times for me. I've never been able to successfully like pollinate it or anything, but yeah, just a fair warning, if you get a flower of the dragon scale, it reeks. Like, it's disgusting. I hate the smell. I mean, it's not that bad. Like, I may be exaggerating, but it's a very like intense plant smell. I don't know. Let me know if you've had one bloom on you before, because I remember like waking up in the middle of the night and I was like, what the heck is that stink? It's so bad. And it like just filled the entire second floor of my house. But you know, it's not a big deal. You can just chop them off, or even I'll probably trim this off before it blooms, because like I don't want the plant to be putting energy into that. But yeah, it's a beautiful plant. I really have not had a lot of issues with it. More recently, I have had a pest issue with several of my plants, and especially my alocasia, which yeah, we're gonna continue broaching that topic as I go along. The only pest that I've had on any of my alocasia is mealybugs, which they're manageable but really annoying and sometimes hard to fully eradicate. So I have had the last few months some mealies that keep on popping up on this plant. Previous to that, I didn't have any pests for like 2 years. So, you know, just know alocasia, of all the plants in your collection, if you are going to be hit by pests, always check the alocasia, because like, I don't know, I just feel like the pests tend to gravitate towards them. You're not guaranteed to get pests on alocasia all the time, but if you do have pests in your house already, they're probably going to hit your alocasia. But that being said, I love the look of this plant so much. I think it's so absolutely stunning. Just the texture to the leaves and the size of the leaves. I mean, I have had some bigger leaves on this guy in the past. As I mentioned, I had to trim them off because they were dying, but I'm hoping that in the future it will continue to give me these nice big leaves. Maybe once I can get rid of the mealybug outbreak. Again, I've been treating it constantly, but they just keep coming back and it's just so annoying. But I will say, so I recently potted it into this no drainage situation, which in general, I have found that alocasia tends to prefer self-watering pots or no drainage. There is a way to do it that you can research. I add leca on the bottom and then a very chunky soil. I can't speak to it long term because, you know, I haven't had any of my alocasia in no drainage or self-watering pots for longer than about maybe, I think 7 months is the longest. So like I haven't had alocasia in no drainage and self-watering pots for years on end, but I will say that very quickly after I pot them up in a no drainage situation or self-watering pots, they tend to do really well, like pretty much immediately, which I will get to with the next plant that I'm going to talk about. I just see immediate improvement. So I do think that alocasia maybe like to have more consistent moisture, not so much that they like rot. I just don't think that they like to dry out or like get bone dry. Like they just don't tolerate it as well as some other aroids do, like the philodendron or monstera, stuff like that. They may be a little bit more like anthurium in that way, because I feel like anthurium also prefer to have a little bit of consistent moisture, or at least humidity going on. Maybe not quite moisture, but you know. But speaking of humidity, I have this on top of my greenhouse cabinet, not inside my greenhouse cabinet. Yeah, this is ambient humidity, same as my alocasia black velvet. And overall, I feel like it's fairly easy care. This right here is my alocasia cuprea, the third alocasia I ever got. And wow, this is honestly the comeback queen. I didn't get this until December of 2022, I believe. So at this point, it's been about a year and a half with this plant. And I think I've said it a lot on my channel, but it was a roller coaster with Alocasia cuprea, let me tell you. At first, so it did get shipped to my house in December, and it really did not tolerate the shipping very well. It rotted on me like initially, so we were off to a very poor start, and it proceeded to rot on me at least 3 or 4 times over the course of like the first year that I owned it. And it was pretty much perpetually a 1 to 2 leaf plant. Like it would not give me any more than that. If you don't know, Alocasia, I think are prone to having like maybe 1 or 2 leaves sometimes, and they just cycle through, especially if they're not quite happy or not in their ideal conditions, or they haven't gotten like as robust of a root system as they need to sustain more leaves. They will very, very willingly let go of old leaves very quickly. Yeah, in my experience, that has been the case, and I've seen that around a lot, where a lot of people have alocasias that only have 1 or 2 leaves. But now we're up to 4 leaves. I honestly very recently put it into this no drainage situation. It's just like a clear vessel that I got from a thrift store. The roots are going absolutely crazy. And yeah, I love the leaves on this plant because they're so alien looking and weird. This was on my favorites list for August because yeah, it's just been thriving, doing really well. And I've always loved the look of Alocasia cuprea. Like it's just so bizarre and different. And maybe some people wouldn't like it because it's like a little bit creepy looking almost, but like I really like it. But yeah, I saw vast improvement once I put it in this no drainage situation. I also have it in my greenhouse cabinet, so it has a lot of humidity, although I don't think that that was the main contributing factor to its success because I had it in the greenhouse cabinet previously and it did not thrive the way that it's thriving now. And the only real change that I made was putting it in no drainage. So I don't know, don't hate me, that's just my own personal experience. I have pretty much all of my other plants in drainage. It's just the Alocasia in specific seem to prefer to not have holes in their pots, I guess. All right, and then if you can believe it, there was yet another massive time skip. I did not get another Alocasia after those first 3 for almost a year because I'm pretty sure I may or may not have doubled my Alocasia collection in one fell swoop. Maybe, was it October or November of 2023? So near, like close to a year now at this point, which is honestly kind of mind-blowing to me. I had the opportunity to visit a greenhouse and buy a bunch of plants at cost, and there were some really nice plants. I actually have a whole video on it, and I can't believe that was almost a year ago now. That's kind of insane. But the first of those 3 plants I'm going to talk about is my Alocasia frydek, which I don't know if I have a definitive favorite Alocasia in my collection, if I'm being honest. Like I feel like I love them all fairly equally, but if I had to pick a favorite, it'd probably be this one. I mean, somewhat predictably. But yeah, this is my Alocasia frydek that's variegated and gorgeous. I mean, this is definitely probably one of the most coveted Alocasia out there that like people know about, because I think that there are some, like in the Alocasia space, there are some other variegated Alocasias, like, I don't know, I think there's like a variegated black velvet and stuff like that that are pretty popular, but I feel like the frydek is the one that people tend to rave over the most. So I was unbelievably happy when I was able to add this to my collection. And you know, it's been doing pretty well in my collection. It is like a little bit, you know, facing one direction because it's in my greenhouse cabinet in a corner, so it kind of has to, which, you know, I don't mind. I like the way that it looks where it's at. And it isn't a self-watering pot that, you know, honestly, I might need to repot it kind of soon because it's been in this pot for almost a year now. And in my experience, I feel like Alocasia root pretty aggressively, but yeah, it's honestly so beautiful. I mean, that's all I really have to say about it. I have seen 1 or 2 mealybugs on it, but it has not been a plant that has really suffered the most from mealybugs in my collection. Like, you know, it just kind of happened to have 1 or 2, but then I didn't see any more once I treated it. So like, that's been a plus. Like I haven't had any like major issues with it. The only thing is that, you know, it used to have like this really stunningly stark white variegation. And for a while I was like a little bit concerned about like, oh, like did it lose that? You know, why is it more of like a pale green color? And someone told me in the comments of one of my videos that actually the Friedeck only really has that super white color when it's young. So I haven't like done any extra research on it, but I guess that would make sense as to like why it's not giving me any more like really stark white variegation, because, you know, it's a little bit older now, it's more mature. So maybe that's the case. Which is like a little bit of a bummer, but I mean, if that's what it is, like that's fine. And I still think that it's really pretty. Like this leaf in particular, look at that. Oh, it's so beautiful. And yeah, it's just like mottled and very cool looking. So yes, love this plant. And then this was the next plant from that same haul from the greenhouse. This was the Alocasia macrorrhiza camouflage. And you know, I can't say that I'm incredibly well versed in alocasia or anything like that, but this one in particular, I just had not heard of before seeing it at the greenhouse. But it really stood out to me because like, wow, look at these leaves. Is that not absolutely stunning? I mean, it's so unique and gorgeous. Like I love the way that these leaves look. And I mean, I do not actually have this one in the greenhouse cabinet. It does grow in ambient humidity and it does pretty well. Although I will say that this plant was one that gave me some issues when it came to the mealybugs. As I've mentioned a few times, I had some struggles with mealybugs, and this one by far was like the worst culprit. Like, oh my gosh, the infestation on this plant for the mealies was like the worst mealybug infestation I've ever seen on any of my plants ever, which was not great. But I can confidently say now, I have not seen any mealybugs on this plant in the last like 3 months, maybe 2 months at least. Like it's been a while, so I'm feeling more and more comfortable, but like I do check it like every single day, because if you didn't notice, like there's this white mottled variegation and that can hide mealybugs. I mean, it is called macrorrhiza camouflage, and I guess that's an apt name considering the fact that it camouflaged all the mealybugs. That was a really bad joke, but like you get what I mean. Like I did not spot them for the longest time, and then I just saw all of it at once and I was horrified. You'll have to let me know if that's ever happened to you before. You just are going about your life and, you know, blissfully unaware of the state of some of your plants sometimes, because mealybugs can like multiply really quickly. Like over the span of just a single week between waterings, it can just like just go crazy. So yeah, that's what happened to me. They all just flocked to the single alocasia, but like thankfully we're beyond that. And you know, I can't say for sure that you will have the same experience that I did. I'm just kind of sharing my own personal experience. But like other than the mealybugs, it's been pretty easy. Like I haven't had any issues with it rotting on me, at least not yet. I haven't, you know, haven't had any issues with it not growing. Like it's been fine. It's been chill. It's been good. And the last plant I got at that greenhouse was this Alocasia Adora Aria, Variegata Aria. I don't know what the order is, but it is variegated and it has the yellow variegation. And this one's also like a little bit, because it's sitting on a shelf and there's a window and it stretches towards the window, and you know, like what can you do? On the shelf it looks great, but here it looks a little, yeah. But that's okay, because honestly, this plant, the variegation, oh my gosh, do you see that? Oh, that's to die for. Salivation, just everything. Oh my word. Yeah, just take a moment. Look at that. That's so freaking beautiful. And usually I would say like I'm not typically a fan of more yellow variegation. Like I seem to gravitate more towards like silvery plants and plants that have more white variegation or like light green. You know, this is yellow variegation, and wow, like you know, this is definitely the exception to my typical preference. And yeah, this is another plant that obviously I have it like in a very similar self-watering pot situation to the Alocasia Friedeck, although this one is an ambient humidity. So like, yeah, honestly, like this has done great for me. Like I really haven't had any major issues. I feel like its growth slowed down a little bit recently, but honestly, that could just be because it needs to be repotted. I kind of suspect it needs a repot, so there's that. When it came to like the mealybug outbreak and everything, it was similar to the Friedic in that I did see 1 or 2 mealybugs on here, but once I treated it, I never saw another mealybug because I think they were all just, you know, having a slumber party on my Alocasia macrorrhiza camouflage instead. So, you know, that's fine. Yeah, honestly, if you're looking for like a more yellow variegation, I would highly recommend this one. And I could be imagining it, but I feel like this has gotten more accessible recently. Like I feel like I've seen it pop up at a few local plant stores. Like when I've gone in there, I've just seen it around. So there's also that to take into consideration. Like this one is maybe more readily available. At least like it has been in my area. I don't know about your area, but it is very, very beautiful. I love it so very much. A+. All right, the final 2 Alocasia that I have to talk about are both very small. They're babies. They're children. This is my Alocasia Okinawa Silver Variegata. At least that's what I purchased it as. I'm pretty sure it's like the Alocasia Adora that I just showed you, except it has like a white and silvery variegation pattern going on instead of the Aria. So as you can see, it is very, very beautiful. Oh my gosh, so stunning. It's got a lot of sectoral variegation going on and some other bits of like silvery variegation kind of modeled in there. Oh, this is certainly to die for. Although I will say, number 1, I got this plant quite recently and very much so on a whim at the same time as I picked up my Monstera albo from Facebook Marketplace. Other thing is that this did used to have more leaves than it currently has. So speaking of the tendency for Alocasia kind of like drop a lot of leaves and only have 1 or 2, this plant is currently doing that to me. Although I have not yet repotted it from its original vessel here, so maybe it's just due for a repot. That's just kind of my hope. I hope that it's not rotting on me or having some other issue because yeah, I really like this plant a lot and I want it to stay healthy and happy. But thankfully, I actually don't think that any of my Alocasia have died on me. I've had lots of issues with them, but I'm very happy to say that none of them have actually just like straight up croaked and perished. So I feel tentatively confident in my ability to like nurse it back to health. Most of the time that ends up being like potting it into no drainage or putting it into like a high humidity situation. Like heck, even throwing this into my prop box might help. So I will be sure to keep you updated as to the health of this plant in the future, but as of right now, I can't say that it's thriving. It is in my greenhouse cabinet, so I sort of would have expected it to do better, but like, you know, it did have to acclimate to my environment. It was obviously in someone else's house for its entirety of its life. So, you know, I can't expect too much. It needs some time, and I've only had it for maybe 2 months. So yeah. And last but not least is a plant that I have grown from corm. It looks a little bit funky right now, but this is my Alocasia michelitziana, which is like the Alocasia Friedic, except all green, not variegated. And obviously, it's still in the moss. I've grown it from 3 corms that are currently popping up. So we've got 2 leaves right here, a new leaf right here, and another corm is sprouting right there. So yeah, it's super cute. I harvested these corms from my husband's Alocasia michelitziana that he has in his office. He wanted to get some plants for his office, and we finally ended up picking up several plants that are all thriving, by the way. And one of them was an Alocasia michelitziana that he has on his windowsill. Yeah, as I was repotting it, I just snatched some of the corms because I don't have an Alocasia michelitziana, and I didn't think that I wanted one until I saw his in person, and I was like, oh! I mean, I would take that. So yeah, we're growing it from scratch. I'm gonna need to repot it very, very soon because yeah, it's definitely rooted and ready to go. Well, if I am honestly feeling really ill right now, after just like standing here and talking for so long, like my throat is just like bleh. Very quickly though, I do want to share with you, I think there's 2, maybe 3 tentatively Alocasia on my wish list. And this is, I'm not gonna like run out and buy them right now, but like if I wanted to expand my Alocasia collection, these are the ones that I would try to get first, I think. The first one is actually a very easy and accessible one, and I'm surprised that I haven't gotten it yet, but I just like haven't. But I've seen them at like Walmart, big box stores, that sort of thing. And that is the Alocasia Silver Dragon. I'll scooch over here so I can feature some pictures of it. Oh my goodness. I mean, I've always loved this plant. It's very similar to the Alocasia dragon scale, except it is, I mean, hence its name, much more like silvery. And it does seem to have like a little bit more glossiness to it that resembles the Alocasia cuprea. I could be wrong about that, but whenever I see pictures of it, it looks a little bit, it kind of has cuprea vibes in my opinion, just with like, yeah, how smooth those leaves look. But yeah, I just think that it's really, really pretty. And it's also very accessible. So like, really, I could probably just go out at any point and get one. You know, I'm just kind of waiting for one to organically come along that is like the one that I want for my collection. And I want to wait until I have like a very specific space. I want to keep it, that sort of thing. So the next one is the Alocasia Bambino Variegata. And funnily enough, I don't think that I like the regular Bambino. I am actually pretty picky when it comes to Alocasia. Like I've seen like a lot of different kinds out and about in plant stores and stuff, but like I don't like most of them, if I'm being honest. Most of the ones that I actually like, I already have in my collection. But yeah, the Bambino, like the regular one, like I'm just not into it. But for some reason, once you add in that little bit of variegation, which the variegation tends to be like creamy and pink, oh my word, like it completely changes the plant in my opinion, and I absolutely adore the way that it looks. And you know, the leaf shape when it doesn't have like that pink variegation, like, you know, I think that it's cool, but something about the fact that the leaves are so like dark, I don't know, it just doesn't quite complement the leaf shape in my opinion, like the regular kind. But then add in some variegation and all of a sudden, like, I don't know, like it just completely transforms the plant in my opinion. And I think I already said that, but yeah, if I had the opportunity to get one, I would absolutely get one because wow, it's stunning. I'm almost certain that they're very expensive though, so that might have to wait. Then the other one that I would consider getting, I don't know if I would get the Bambino Variegata and this plant, but I would probably do like one or the other. And that's the Alocasia Dragon Scale Variegata, which, you know, it's like the dragon scale that I already have, which like I love and adore, but you know, you add in some variegation to it. And normally the variegation that I see looks a little bit more like yellowish rather than like that pinkish variegation that the Bambino has. So, you know, I guess they are different enough that like, yeah, I would like them both. But yeah, I mean, it's everything that I love about the dragon scale, but add in some variegation. And yeah, it's a little bit more spicy and fun. And I am superbly excited about the prospect of getting this plant someday, but again, it is honestly quite expensive, so like the odds of that happening are a little bit more slim. But okay, my camera battery is about to cease, so I'm going to probably stop it right there. But I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun just sharing with you my alocasias. I was honestly shocked that I hadn't made an alocasia collection video yet, but like, here we are. And the next one that I'm going to make after this will probably be my Monstera collection. So keep your eyes open for that, because yeah, that's another genus that I, you know, unwittingly, like I just blinked and I was like, oh wait, I actually have quite a few of these. Comment down below what your favorite alocasia is, you know, whether you even like the genus or like if you hate it. I don't know, just give me all of your opinions. I want to hear them. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. And yeah, I hope that you have a wonderful and blessed day. Bye-bye!